You Are Not an Artist podcast. This is our podcast. Don't get freaked out. That first part is meant to trigger you, but if it didn't, then welcome to the podcast. My name is Alejandro Castañon, and I'm joined by my wife, Shelby. How do you pronounce your last name?
Seymour, apparently.
Seymour?
That's how everyone. I'm like, why? They mispronounce my last name more than your last name.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand.
I don't know why.
Seymour.
Welcome.
And
Oh, God.
we also have our children in the background.
Right when you press record is whenever they start fighting with each other. All right. Well, if you hear some cats fighting in the background, then
It's lovingly.
those sounds have been inserted. And
For your listening
pleasure. It's very boring here. We don't have anything. So we inserted cats fighting in the background. All right. So we're actually talking today about fostering your local community. So
this is the fourth step in phase one. We've covered building your skill set, developing your creative process, and creating your inventory. If this is your first time on the podcast, we have what's called the 3-phase curriculum, and we walk you through how to become a professional artist from your very first drawing all the way to retiring into your business. So we're talking about phase one, which is building the foundation of your business. So we're on phase one, step 4, which is fostering your community.
It's the last step of the first phase. And it's just as important as all the others. But it's probably the most uncomfortable
yes.
of all the others.
I don't know about for you. You have a weird...
It depends. That's not true. You're right. It depends on the kind of person you are. If you're kind of reserved and, a little kind of quiet and shy. Okay, and we're back. Our cats have destroyed our home. And so we had to pause and clean up for 10 hours. But we're back. Okay. So the last thing that I remember talking about was the fact that there's going to be different kinds of people that are going to be comfortable with this last step of this phase one, which is getting in your community and really trying to kind of let people see you and associate you with your artwork. And, that can be uncomfortable for some people, and for other people it's not going to be. Either way, it's still very important that you do that. I think a lot of artists tend to want to just straight sell online from the beginning.
Yes, because it's very tempting to want to just jump to e-commerce. One, because the people who are selling you how to sell on Etsy courses or make it sound so easy. And I know that there's a lot of artists who are introverts and neurodivergents, and you just don't want to have to deal with people. That's why you're an artist. You didn't want to have a regular job to deal with people.
Exactly. And the reality is that you're probably not going to find a gallery that's going to sell your work for like $10,000 to $20,000 a piece right at the bat. So you're going to have to grow that yourself. So that's why it's important to
correct. So
to do this particular part of the step.
Yes. And I know that I had this problem when I started showing my art. I had this idea that if it was good enough, then people would want me to show it in their venues.
It's a misconception.
And people would just want to buy it. Yeah. And if people weren't asking me to do those things, it was because it wasn't good enough. Mm. But that's a complete misunderstanding of how business works.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how great it is.
Yeah.
If you're not getting it out there, no one's going to know how great it is.
Yeah, so the takeaway is you have to build the demand.
Yes.
The demand is not going to come to you just because you magically created a social media and a website, and posted things up. Like that's not how it works. You have to build a serious demand like a normal business would.
Right. This is shifting. I think this is the first step. We're shifting away from being an artist, and you're shifting into being a business owner.
Yeah, think of it as like the difference between manufacturing the product and then selling the product. The manufacturer never sells it themselves to the customer. The retail space does that.
Right. But you are both the manufacturer.
You are both the manufacturer and the retail.
Right.
Yeah. So in order to recognize that means you're going to have to get to know customers. And the only way you can get to know customers like in a real way is by getting out there and actually participating and meeting them.
Right. But you don't have to do that from scratch. We, again, have created a subset of action steps for you to take.
Right. This is just the first step for you to get out there. It's not meant for you to start selling.
Yes.
You're not meant to go out to these social events and hawk your artwork with you.
Correct.
You just go out there just to kind of put your work out there at venues, at some local shows, and just show up and be there. And then even go to places that you're not showing and participate in the event itself, so people will see you and become more familiar with you.
The idea of fostering a community is twofold. One, your biggest aim is to, you want the people in your community not to see you as the role you are now. They might see you and be like, oh, well, he or she's a student or a personal banker or a teacher. This step is meant to shift their perception of you from that role to when they see you and they go, oh, look, it's Becky. That's the only name I think of. Becky. She's an artist.
Yeah.
And they tell their friends, oh, you've seen her stuff.
Yeah.
You're planting the idea in people's minds that you are an artist. That's the first part of this.
I think something that's important to consider on how to do this or mentality is, and one of my mentors taught me this, in order for people to really get to know you, they've got to see you, they've got to hear you, they have to have some sort of handshake with you, so, there's that kind of level of perception of the sensory. And then they also have to, once they do all those things, they'll start talking about you.
Yes.
So you want them to speak about you as well as hear you, see you, and, in some cases, shake your hand. Those things are all very important in order for you to build up a demand of who you're going to be. Sometimes volunteering is a great way to do that.
Absolutely. Yes, you don't have to only be pushing our artwork. In fact, you don't want to be trying to push your artwork.
You just want to be associated with art.
You just want you just want to represent yourself as an artist.
Correct. Yeah, and so you got to be all about art in your community. You really do. And if you live in a small town, I think you're at an advantage because
you're at 100% an advantage.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of supplemental podcasts before these episodes where you were doing the Small Town Artists podcast.
Correct, Small Town Artists podcast. Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of great interviews
Absolutely.
And just supplemental information about the advantages of being in a small town.
Correct.
Because when you're in a big market we're in Texas, so if you go to Austin or Dallas, you kind of already get lost in a sea of other artists.
Yeah. Then they're all screaming that they're artists.
Yes. And it's hard for people. It's easier for a town of 5,000 to be like, oh, we have 3 artists, and here's one of them.
So here's a good example. Let's say that there's an art show that's being curated in your city. Let's say that you live in Austin. All right. You know as well as I do that it's hard to get into those shows because there's so many artists applying, or it's really hard in getting into some galleries in town because they've got a juried process, or they only let in certain people or whatever. They're picky. In a small town, if there's a gallery, they want your artwork. They want local artwork. They just can't find it.
And it's a lot easier to people in smaller towns are not as bureaucratic.
Right.
So it's a lot easier for you to get your art in schools.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Government buildings.
Yeah, I had my artwork recently up at at the Convention Center. I think I've had those prints up there for 5 years.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to have me renew the contract every year, and that never happened. They just left it up there.
Yep.
And that's how it is. And that's how easy it is to get artwork up in small
right.
towns.
Because the small towns don't have artists constantly clawing at them.
Yeah.
They genuinely want you to ask them to do things because they want to be involved.
That's absolutely right.
So so it's a lot easier. You're at an advantage if you're in a smaller town.
Right.
So before we start going into the action steps, I want to reaffirm that this step is we're inching our way towards the big launch of your business. Phase 2 is officially launching your business. Mm-hmm. While you might begin selling in this action step, you might sell your first original, which is a good milestone. You're not official. This is not your grand opening.
Right.
This is your soft launch. And a soft launch is incredibly beneficial to you because you're going to be able to physically, in this context, be able to physically see what customers respond to your art. You'll be able to talk to them, understand them.
Right.
You'll be able to develop great customer profiles because you'll see what kinds of people react to your art. And they're going to be the kinds of people you don't expect. And you're
Right.
like, I never thought they'd be into my art.
Right.
And you'll also be able to get feedback and just from trial and error, learning what works and what doesn't within your local community where people are very forgiving.
Yeah.
Is going to help you when you actually launch.
Yeah.
And you're having to deal with e-commerce and Google reviews
Right.
and that nonsense.
So I want to point out something on this part is that the period of time that it'll take you to ramp that up and have people perceive you that way completely depends on your schedule. You can't overbook yourself into trying to do every single art event and every show and every volunteer opportunity. That's really, really tough. But if you can create some sort of consistency in your schedule to do that year round, I think you could do it in maybe a year to 2 years.
I would say so too. We have a pretty good. We're incredibly busy, but we still maintain a pretty good role in the community.
Oh, absolutely.
And we probably do an event once every 2 weeks, at least.
Yeah. Well, now that the COVID restrictions.
Yeah, now that COVID. We haven't been.
Yeah, before, man.
Before
last year was
COVID,
terrible.
we were.
Oh my God, we were starving for like building that kind of connection to the community like we used to.
Yeah, we were before COVID. We were doing it weekly.
Yeah.
But we were feeling the burnout of that. Now we have a pretty good schedule of.
Yeah.
We do it. We do lots of. We go out in the community when there's events, and we go out to our restaurants now and support them.
Yeah.
Socially distanced.
Yeah.
But we do now try to do, especially as people are doing outdoor events.
Yeah, we're doing a lot more of it for sure.
Absolutely.
For
so,
sure.
As we've been saying this entire curriculum, make it sustainable because it's not a sprint. You can't rush to the finish line because people are going to feel that's not authentic.
Right.
You're not going to actually connect to people, and that's going to hurt you in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So find a rhythm and sink into it, and don't force this to go quickly because if you start forcing it, you'll burn out and you'll end up quitting.
Yeah. I mean, goal setting is good, but try to make them realistic. Okay. All right.
So first, before you go out and start talking to people, let's talk about what you can do to kind of prepare yourself for that. So I highly suggest having a portfolio put together.
Yes, 100%.
Before you go talk to clients and restaurants and all these venues.
Yeah, so this is what I used to do right before I would go. What I would do is I would, and this was like, because I had limited resources, but what I would do is I would take my iPad and I'd create a folder with all the really good photos I had of my artwork, and I would upload them into a specific album, album on my iPad. And when I would go out to these places, like, bars and restaurants, I'd give them my business card, and then I'd say, hey, look, this is my artwork, this is what I would like to show it in your place, here's the general size of it, and I'd show them without them having to wait, and like me, like kind of having to rifle through where's my pictures, let me see, hold on one second. I had it already ready to go as soon as I walked in there. And so it didn't take them very long to see my artwork and for them to give me an answer.
Absolutely.
So, and it wasn't like pictures that I randomly took in my studio. They were really good photos of my artwork.
Right, and they should be the photos that you were taking when you were creating your inventory, your polished, finished pieces that you're documenting with your really good camera. Those that we told you to already be collecting, that's what you're going to use for your portfolio. So especially if you're working with older clients who tend to own these buildings and managing these places, I think it looks really polished if you have a physical copy of your work. Like take your pictures and get them printed into nice little prints.
Yeah.
Or go online and print a book.
Yeah.
Of your work.
I would recommend, though, that if you're going to take some artwork over there, that you schedule an appointment first. Yes. Don't just walk into their building yet and what?
We're not to the point of we're talking to people. We're just building the portfolio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we are getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, yeah. So just build a portfolio, a booklet, or something small that you can carry around that's easy for you to show your work. I think a book is actually a really good idea. If you can
Yeah.
afford to do a book, I mean, that's a really powerful thing.
And what I actually suggest is beside each photo, and this is great just for you to have as inventory.
Right.
Beside each photo, have the title of the work, what the year it was created, the size, and the price.
Ooh, yeah.
So that way you look hella professional.
Yeah.
Not only when you're talking to business owners who are then going to see that you're serious.
Yeah,
You're
no
not
kidding.
you're not just some dinky
Exactly.
college kid with your art.
Yeah.
They're going to see you're legitimate. But also if you can take it with you, and when you are at events and someone's like, "Oh, can I see your work?" You can hand them this really nice looking book. Be like, "Oh, here you go." And then people are going to take you more seriously because you've put in a lot of the work and shown so much consideration up front.
Absolutely.
So I think a portfolio is a powerful tool that I don't see many artists
Oh
utilizing.
no, maybe back in the day they did.
Yes.
And even then, it wasn't like a book. It was like just like a 12 by 18 binder of their sketch work.
Yes. It needs to be. This is basically going a step above Instagrams. Too many artists are reliant. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
go check out my Instagram." That it doesn't feel considerate of the relationship between you and the client.
It's great for them to find you on there.
Yes, but when someone wants to see your artwork,
Yeah.
it's like the difference between like going and getting, like, if your friend's like, "Oh, well, let's go get some fast food," or you're like, "Oh, let's sit down and have a meal together
Yeah.
at a nice restaurant,"
Or buying clothes online and buying them in person.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So it's a different experience, and the experience while you're experiencing it became very meta.
Yes. The experience. That's a very deep thought. You
Yes.
cannot take me there.
What your customer experiences while they're viewing your art
Yes.
will greatly determine
Yeah.
how they see you and your
Yeah.
artwork.
And I think the perception of like picking up a very nice book and
Absolutely.
an art book, and most people that pick up art books, they're like art history books.
Yes.
And I don't, obviously people are going to know that you're not giving them an art history book, but that association of like, nice art is in books, or
That's
nice
already-
nice and important art is in books.
And that thought is already embedded in their mind.
Yeah.
And so you're just tugging at that thread
Oh,
and
man.
using what's already in their head
Yeah,
to
that's so
your
fancy.
advantage.
That's
So
fancy.
that's something we definitely
Yeah.
recommend.
Cool. All right. So that's the portfolio. Now,
So once you have your portfolio, now it is time to make your online
presence. Now, do you mean like social media first, or what do you?
No, I suggest, so we have your physical portfolio.
Correct.
It's also important to have a digital portfolio. So I suggest creating your website. At this stage with your e-commerce, I wouldn't suggest getting on a site and purchasing the most expensive e-commerce plan. You're not there yet.
You can always upgrade.
You can always upgrade if you see that demand is growing. But at this point, go with a really simple plan.
Yeah.
We use Wix, and I've used Squarespace and Weebly and WordPress, and now I've used Wix. And I honestly prefer the drag and drop kind of way that Wix approaches websites. It's easier than trying to figure out which theme is the best. We are not obviously being paid by Wix, but that's just what we have used, and I found to be the most user-friendly, especially if you're not a computer science
Yeah,
person.
I agree. Wix. I've been with Wix for 8 years almost, and yeah, I like them.
Yeah,
I don't think
really
there's any
like
reason
it.
to change. Yeah, unless you have a really specific case or a specific reason, in which case you could always just message us.
Yeah, and just ask us our
Yeah.
But that's just our 2 cents. It doesn't matter. I would just say the biggest thing is don't go spend.
Yeah, don't try to keep
Don't-
your costs low.
Yes, don't
Yeah.
go spend $500 on a website.
Yeah, not right now.
Yes. So get online, put your portfolio together, try to make it match the professionalism of your portfolio.
Right.
You want it to look extravagant and luxurious
Well-
without trying to look too like high. It's a delicate balance.
I would say I would go more with like the feeling of one of a kind,
Yeah.
like rare.
Yeah.
More than luxurious, I would say rare.
That's a better way to say it.
Yeah, I would go that direction because people that have that kind of money want rare anyway. But showing it off as rare, I think gives it a different kind of tone.
Yeah,
you know
I
what
agree.
I mean?
Definitely be yourself, but
For sure.
be authentic. But remember, this is the face of your business.
Right. So you want to present your artwork because it is rare. Your artwork is
Absolutely.
rare and beautiful. So you want to present it as rare and beautiful.
Absolutely.
So, and still stick to what you like, the kind of style you have and what you like. But just think rare and beautiful. So
Absolutely.
That'll help you design your website.
So then once you have your website put together, then I would start tackling social media. Now, This is where, if you haven't documented first of all, if you haven't finished your inventory, get back there.
Yeah.
And this is where documenting your process throughout while you're creating your inventory, this is going to pay off in like just abounds.
Yeah.
Because now you have all this documentation, hundreds of pieces of documentation that you can start putting on your social media. So let's first break down why social media is helpful to artists and what it's not.
Yeah.
So social media is it's okay. So Alejandro has 7,600 Instagram followers. Okay. So we always hear people being like, I have 1.2 million followers.
Yeah.
Da, da, da. And we act like followers is an income source.
No.
But that's really not what has led to any sales for us or being contacted about any projects. What does lead to being contacted about projects is tagging your area, tagging the right niches and kind of little.
Yeah, your goal on Instagram should be to be easily discovered.
Exactly.
Yeah, that should be your number one goal. Now, we'll obviously can get deeper about engagement and all this other stuff with your audience.
But at a very surface level, especially where you're at right now, the point of social media is more if someone's looking for an artist for a certain project, you're there.
Yeah.
It's like a little business card that you leave everywhere.
Yeah.
And the more content you put out there, the more little business cards you're leaving all over the place. And so like Alejandro got contacted about this great mural project simply because when he had mural projects in the past, he was just tagging San Angelo and tagging murals.
Yeah. And
then when someone in San Angelo was like, oh, we need a muralist, he popped up.
Yeah.
That's the real value of social media.
Yeah.
Is that when people start to look, it's not to convert people when they see your art, be like, I need it.
Yeah.
Social media is just so when someone has a need for an artist, you're there.
Yeah.
They can find you. So while we do say start getting on social media, don't fall into the followers game. That's not the point. And followers ultimately lead to nothing but.
One mistake that I see people do is they try to do contests too early to get followers. But here's the bad thing about doing contests. Contests will always going to get people to like a page just to win the contest. But they're not genuinely interested in what you're doing. They just want to win whatever it is that you're giving away. So don't do contests at the beginning because you're chasing followers. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing contests for your loyal followers that are actually been with you. You can do contests for them. That's what I do for a lot of the people that I know are on my newsletter list that actually know who they are.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think you have to focus on the most important parts at the very beginning.
And no one really will tell you because.
Yes, no one will say it.
Because so many people are indoctrinated because Instagram's social media in general is good at selling this idea because the more likes and the more follows you try to get, the more you're on social media, which is more ads they can sell.
And when you're new as an artist business, your goal, you think, is to just hit all these high metrics from the beginning.
Right.
But if you're using tactics that are not going to help your brand, achieve the kind of reaction you want from your audience, and it's just kind of like vanity, tactics to just kind of get people to, follow you for a different reason. If it's a contest or whatever, like it's not worth it in the long run because you're gonna like plump up your numbers and the sales are not going to reflect, the engagement's not going to reflect. So
it's the same thing we talked about last week when you're creating your inventory. If the followers and likes game is a game based on how much of the mass market you can tap.
Right.
But if you have, even if you had 80,000 followers and 79,000 of them are mass market, you really only have 1,000 niche followers, so you really only have 1,000 followers.
Yeah.
Only your 1,000 followers are going to consider buying from you.
Yeah, and consider the fact that the algorithm isn't showing everybody that follows you your work, so that makes it even harder for you to pinpoint who your audience is. It doesn't help if like a part of those numbers are people that don't really engage with you,
right?
Because they're not genuinely interested. So that's why it's so important to focus on the content and the quality of your posts than trying to chase these numbers.
So that's why I would say at this point, don't get lost in the rabbit hole of social media. At this point, post your work, tag your area, tag the medium you're in, tag your state, tag your region, like we're in West Texas. And maybe tag a few things that are just very specific to your area. And don't get on YouTube and be like, how to use your hash. Don't worry about that right now. You don't need to get into that right now.
Yeah.
Just tag who you are and where you are.
Yeah,
throw your stuff up there.
Again, this is about building community. It's not about selling.
Yes. We're not selling at this point.
Yeah, we're just trying to like put our little, build a spider web, if you will, of all these connections that run across social media into the real world and vice versa. Like you want people to be able to, like when I have a mural in 3 places downtown actually. And what I'll do is I know that 2 of those places have geolocations on Instagram. So what I'll go is I'll search those locations on Instagram and I'll find people that have tagged pictures of themselves at those places. And anybody that had a picture of my work in their picture, I would comment on it and say, hey, thanks for taking a picture of my work. It took me a long time or whatever. And they're really, really stoked that I reached out to them for that.
Right.
But what that does is it builds a sense of connection and community.
Absolutely.
To where they're like, oh, the real life artist actually talked to me.
Right.
And those kind of little things, you would think that doesn't make a huge difference, but when you do it consistently, people remember you. I have a lot of times where I'll go out in the community and some random person will come up to me and ask me an art question. And I'm like, I don't know you, but I'm assuming you follow me on social. That's the only thing I can imagine.
Right.
And that happens a lot.
Absolutely.
That happens a lot. So that's kind of your goal. You want people to really associate you with artwork. But you've got to make sure that you're putting out those connectors on social,
right,
and on in the real world. So
absolutely. So then, once you have your portfolio put together and you have an online presence, those are going to be your tools. Okay, and again, we're not selling. So once you have those 2 tools, it's time to go do the big scary thing and go talk to businesses and venues about displaying your work.
Correct. Now, this is different than early on when we said, going to shows and, stuff like that. We were leading into this. And what we really want to talk about when I was talking about bringing my portfolio to businesses is that's exactly what you should be using a portfolio for, is when you're going into these places of business and you want to be looking at places with high traffic. Unless it's going to be like a city municipal building, which is great because you got a lot of staff people walking through there. But doesn't get a whole lot of daily traffic, there's no use of putting your work somewhere where nobody's really going to see it. So think of places where people are like sitting down for a while. Offices are great.
We put a list together in our checklist for you, which is available.
Yeah.
It should be linked to this podcast, and it's also available on the website. I have the top 9 that I came up with were restaurants and bars.
Yep.
Obviously, which are also great because people who are drinking on weekends see a piece of art they love, and they're just so stoked.
They're so stoked. Yeah, so that's a good one.
Salons and day spas.
That's right. Yeah, because people are sitting down for hours on end.
Tattoo studios.
Perfect. Yep. Unless they have a bunch of their own tattoo artwork. But
it'll depend on I would research the tattoo studio.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have anything up in their studio. Yeah. Some of them are artists as well. It just ask, and if they say, "Hey, we do our own artwork," it's not a rejection. It never hurts to ask.
That's just how tattoo parlors work.
Right. And then I put hotels. Now I realize if you're in a big city, you're competing against giant artists for this. Yeah. But if you're in a small town, you've got little local. You've got tiny local little motels that someone owns that lives here.
Here's a good idea. If you know of any Airbnb people that are doing Airbnb, that's a great option.
Absolutely. Or just traditional bed and breakfasts.
Yeah, or bread and breakfast. Yeah, either one. One. Getting into that circle would be really good.
Yes.
What else you got?
My next one is local boutiques. Yeah. So if you have a downtown scene or any type of shopping area that's something popular on the weekends, or you have a tourist destination.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Absolutely. Bookstores.
Yeah, bookstores.
This works. A lot of the time, books and art go together. The niches interlap.
Yep.
Especially if you do more fan art. So I would lean towards doing some bookstores. I always think you can't miss with that. Event centers. You talked about having your art put up at the convention center.
Yeah.
Again, that's going to be easier in a small town. If you live in Dallas, it's going to be hard to get your art.
No, try it anyway. You might be
100%. Don't realize it will be hard, but please ask. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with asking.
You'd be surprised how many artists sometimes are in an area that don't realize there are certain programs.
Yeah.
You just go looking for them.
Absolutely. And my last one was government offices.
Yeah.
The DMV, it's already ugly. People have to sit there for hours. So you might as well try to spice it up a little bit.
No kidding.
So, yeah, that's where we would start. And there's no, this is not like the only 9 things that you can look. Be creative.
Be creative. Yeah, you come up with your own for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. There have been people that have figured out really interesting ways of showing their work. Yeah. Don't be afraid to try out stuff. You'll learn a lot. And then again, this is a list of just stuff that I've tried.
Absolutely.
In the past.
And also, don't be afraid to offer a consignment with some of these places. So it's not very common that public areas
will charge a price for you to hang it.
Yeah, they won't charge you a price to hang it. But if a restaurant or a bar or someone, a local person's kind of we don't really know, you could always say, well, you can kind of negotiate a consignment, and you explain what a consignment is.
Okay, so when you're approaching a place, you can approach them and say, hey, does it cost anything to hang artwork up in your venue? Or would you be open to me hanging some artwork in their venue? And they'd be like, oh, no, just bring it in. It's fine. I would just have some sort of something written that just says that they allowed you to go in there and hang your work, and that they're not liable for something happening to it because it was, you're approaching them.
Right.
Why would you want to hold them liable? You know Correct. What I mean? They're going to say no. That's different than a gallery. But if it's just a normal restaurant place, you're doing it to help them create a more inviting space. So, go with it with that in mind. But sometimes they'll say, yeah, we do charge a 15% commission on the sale, and then you can, just make sure you put that in writing. But that's the most I've ever seen a local bar or restaurant.
Agreed.
And that's rare that anyone would ask for anything. Most of the ones I've sold at and hung up in never asked for anything. I think there was only one that asked 15%.
The only one that has asked for a percentage from me was just because they covered the sales tax.
Right.
And they just took the sales tax out of it.
Yeah.
Which was totally fine.
I think maybe a boutique might do more of a split with you, 15%.
Yeah.
Because they're going to want a profit. So off of work, if it's a boutique, it's a retail item. So they're adding it to their inventory. So you might see that sort of consignment. Or they might want to purchase it wholesale, which is a totally different story in phase 2. But anyway, yes.
Absolutely. So and the what is helpful when you're displaying your work is not, again, you're not doing this and saying this needs to sell within the month. The point of displaying your work is to get people's eyes on it and build those connections in their brain. Oh, this person did this. And get people talking, and they'll look you up on Instagram or Facebook, and that will start building in their minds that you're this artist. And the more you can get recognized,
Yep.
that's when your business will kind of start congealing in people's minds.
Yeah, it's like it's the normal marketing. I mean, how many times did it take for somebody to like remember a certain product? You know, how many interactions? They say like 6 to 7
I was going to
interactions.
ask, there's like even the big brands like Coca-Cola aim for 6 to 7 interactions before someone buys a
Yeah,
product.
per person. So if you
Yeah.
think at that scale, I remember when I first started, I think I was in like 7 restaurants here in town and like a couple venues,
Mm.
like bars and restaurants. I was in quite a few, and there were a lot of people that would comment and say, "Man, we just left this place and we went to this place, and your art was in both places." You know, that's really good to do at the very beginning because it's top of mind. So anytime they're thinking about, man, I wonder what artist could do this. Oh, there's that guy that I
Yes.
saw from here and here and here and here and here. You know, you're top of mind, so you're going to be thought of for certain projects. You know, the city might reach out to you. A nonprofit organization is definitely going to reach out to you. You know, once they start seeing and hearing your name around, you know,
Absolutely.
that's a good thing for people to want your artwork. You just have to be careful about certain contracts in which you involve your artwork, which
And
we'll talk about
we'll
that
start
later.
talking
Yeah.
about that. That's not something you want to get into at this
Right.
phase.
But you may encounter it.
You may encounter it, and we would say at this point, just say I'm still growing my business.
Yeah.
It's just not. I'm not quite there yet, but I'll contact you when
Yeah.
my business is launched.
Mm-hmm.
So you could kind of get away with it right now because you're just kind of baby stepping your business. It's not official yet, so you can kind of. We'll start talking about those kind of contracts, heavy duty, when
Yeah.
we start getting into phase
Yeah.
2. But for now, for your just sanity, I would just say, just kind of say you're not at that place yet.
Yeah.
Then we'll go get to it. And
Maybe-
remember, at this point, or at any point, you don't need to say yes to everything. You especially don't need to say yes when people see your artwork and ask if you want to do it for exposure.
Yeah, you don't have to say yes to those things quite, you know, at this point. Not that you ever have to, but again, remember that the goal of this is to build your community.
Yes.
So keep that. If you know, I don't necessarily think that doing things for free is going to help you build your community. I only think that your interactions.
Yeah, your interactions are a lot more
and-
important than
Yes.
giving things away.
Yes, absolutely. And just going to these events and
Yeah.
and participating. You know, I do think it's worth submitting to art shows for sure, because then you get to go to the art opening. You know, but I don't. At some art shows, you're not allowed to put that you don't want to sell. So
That's
I would join like an exhibition. Some places actually do allow that.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I did shows for the gallery, sometimes somebody would say, "I don't want to sell that," and I'd be like, "Well, we'd love to have it anyway." We would just put "not for sale" on there.
Right. And so I think those things are a little more when you start getting ready to launch
Yeah.
and pushing yourself into phase 2.
But maybe definitely exhibitions. If it's just an exhibition and you don't have to sell, then I would definitely do it. So you can go to the art opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do it.
So the last thing is participating in local events.
Right. This could be like even doing live painting if you wanted to.
So the live painting has been our bread and butter.
Oh, we love it.
So
It's the best.
live painting is great because it's an easy sell for any venue or event.
It's a great way to be top of mind.
Right. So what live painting is you just go set up your easel or however you work
Yeah.
at a restaurant or a bar or the library or literally anywhere that'll take you.
Right.
And what you do is you just go out and paint what you're going to paint at home.
Correct.
And it's wonderful because it's an easy sell. You just go to a venue and say, "Hey, I'm just looking to kind of get some exposure. I would love to just come in and paint for." I sometimes would paint up to 6 hours.
That's
I know,
long.
I know
That's
you
long.
say that's a lot. So maybe 3 to 4 hours.
At the most, I wouldn't go longer than 4 hours
Yeah.
doing live painting. That's really hard.
So, and then you guys kind of say, "I'll come in for a little while, and I'm going to promote it on my social media.
Yeah.
If you could promote it on your social media." And it's kind of an exchange.
Yeah.
They get a free little event, something that they can promote. It's interesting. It's novel. And then you get free exposure.
Yeah, and there's no easy way to get into it. So it's difficult to get into doing live painting. psychologically.
Yes,
thinking.
it's much harder for you to. It's harder to get over the stage fright than to actually get in somewhere to live paint.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy to get into places. It's the fright of being in front of people that I think people have trouble with. But if you really want to do live painting, then there's no easy way to do it. You're just going to have to do it.
You just jump in. Really, I was terrified the first time, but after I realized
Yeah,
that everyone is in awe of it because they don't create art,
yeah.
then I was like, oh, brother.
And it was easier when you do it with a collective. Like when there's a couple other artists that are doing it
Yeah,
live.
absolutely. And see if you are struggling to do it by yourself, grab an artist buddy. Get a group of 3 or 4 and
Yeah.
go.
That's the other part. You really have to start joining some of your local art communities. If you're lucky in your big city, you can find a
There'll be
lot
some art
of
communities.
different art communities to join. So I would definitely do that.
Yeah, find some artists to collaborate
For
with.
sure.
Ask what they do, especially if you have established artists. If you can find some older artists who have their own studios and
Yeah,
have been doing
I
it.
would go older. Here's the reason why I
For-
would go older. The reason I would go older is because they're slowing. They're not so like hustle
Mhm.
minded. They're already in their groove, and they can share some really great knowledge with you without making you feel like you're not doing enough.
Yeah, they're not indoctrinated by the hustle culture.
Yeah, my mentor is already a retired artist, Warren,
Yeah.
and he's given me great advice, and it's never been pushy. It's never been like,
And it's wonderful to have, yeah. The older artists are more laid back.
Yeah.
They're definitely not going to feel threatened by you because they're just not in that place in their life.
right,
And they're going to just want to help you because they remember what it's like to be where you are.
yeah,
And they know,
and they can introduce you to like some really other great prominent.
yeah.
That's how I got really involved in this art community. I got to know most of the older artists that have been doing it for like 20, 30 years in this community. And I didn't stick with my generation. My generation of artists barely knew what they were doing. I went and made friends with the other old artists, and they connected me around, and that's how my name kind of spread amongst the collectors here in town, was because I was associating myself with older artists.
You'll have a much easier time if you can kind of find an older group of artists
Yeah,
that you
for
really
sure.
vibe with.
for sure.
And then they'll kind of just adopt you
yeah,
into their kind of like their life.
Yeah.
And they're just gonna kind of love all over you.
Yeah.
So it's like having a grandparent artist.
it's a great way to build out the very last segment of building community, which is networking.
Yeah.
I realize that kind of like has a bad connotation, but when you're talking about true networking, you're creating a network of like-minded people that are in like your circle of
Yes.
like circle of influence that you can go to for a question, or you can ask about an opportunity, and they'll give you an
Absolutely.
honest answer, and they'll know because they're well connected. You know, I found that whenever I jumped really all in that, I mean, I know the museum director by name. We know we're friends. You know, pretty much all the gallery owners here in town, I know them. We're all friends. But when I think of it from like an artist that's just standing out, that's very intimidating to think that
Yeah.
you would ever get to know these people at that level. But you can, and you should, because they're people that are influencing art in your community. You should be knowing them by first name basis.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
they're not. You might run across one or two who are very
Yeah,
hoity-toity,
yeah,
but just take that as you didn't want to be that. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not your niche.
yeah. That's
not.
okay.
They didn't vibe with you. That's not a rejection on you. That has to do with them.
Yeah, and sometimes you're going to have a gallery that's just not suited for you, and that's okay. Maybe the person, might be able to help you, figure out a better place for your artwork. Who knows? So it's always good to have a good network of people that you can rely on and that you can, collaborate with sometimes if that, possible. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So those are so let's just recap over our mini objectives for.
But to be honest, this was a big one.
This is a huge. Yeah. Before we do that, this is a.
If it seems heavy and a lot, it's because it's supposed to be.
Absolutely. This is you're launching a business, and I know that's hard for artists because the idea of being an artist is so socially shit on. Like, artists, or you're
Yeah.
either a starving artist, or being an artist is akin to trying to be an actor. It's not a real thing.
Right.
But you're on par with anybody opening a restaurant, or
Yeah.
creating a business,
Yeah.
or going on or trying to make a piece of technology.
Yeah.
You're a business owner. And taking this step is the step to moving away from being a hobby artist, and you're crossing the bridge to being a professional artist.
Yeah.
So this is really where you put on your business hat, and
Mhm.
you're learning
Yeah.
to transition.
Yeah.
So that's why it seems intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a business,
Mhm.
and there's some uncomfortable things that you have to do in a business, and so it's just something that you'll have to kind of maybe slowly over time build up to get better at it, but it's an essential part of the business.
And the best thing to do is to find artists that you can ask questions.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
message us, find artists around you that you
Absolutely.
can ask questions, find artists on
Mhm.
Instagram,
Yep.
message them. Like, the number one thing you can do is ask questions of people who've already been where you are.
Yeah.
And that will help you above and beyond where you can think it'll help you.
Yeah.
So let's recap before we end the podcast. So we're covering building your local community. So you need to 1, create a portfolio, 2, create your online presence, 3, display art in local venues, and 4, participate in your local events.
Yeah. That was good. We covered a lot, but that was the most, that really rounds out the first phase. It's really good.
Absolutely. So if you want these action steps unpacked even more, we do also have the video,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the blog.
Yep.
And we we've just added checklists.
I thought you were going to say virtual reality.
Yes, virtual. You get a whole practice version.
Yeah. So we have worksheets.
So that you can now get on there and download, so that way you can literally check off each step. So when you're done with one, you know exactly what's coming next.
Yeah, man, that's the whole enchilada right there.
The whole
Wow.
shebang.
Yeah, covers all the learning. Yeah, what is it?
Modules.
No, like the way people learn, visually or learning types.
Yeah.
I did the same thing you did yesterday with what was it? You made up a different phrase for saying something.
Yeah.
Shivering. What'd you call it?
Cold rush.
A cold rush.
Yes.
Yes. Interesting times. Okay. All right. Well, that's the end of the podcast. Check out the other places you can find about the 3 phases, which is going to be on the website.
And linked down below.
Yep. Linked on the podcast down below. And make sure you check out the YouTube channel and join our private Facebook group community, which is building up steam.
It is. And we'll have a link to join the community as well. I just made a separate page for that. So
Cool. All right.
Absolutely.
Is that it?
Yep.
All right. See you guys next time.
We will see you next time when we wrap up graduating from phase 1.
That's
That's the president.
Oh, okay. Well, you deserve it.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.